Belly Button Fluff on My Pillow, the poetic podcast series that approaches mental health and poetry as full amateurs. Welcome to episode 5, the season finale. My name is Drew Taylor Wilson, my pronouns are they, them, and I am your host and amateur poetry and mental health expert. Poetry, because I write it, usually for a therapeutic context, and mental health because often the writing it down for the therapeutic context isn't enough. So I made a podcast instead. Each week I have sat down with a fellow mental health and poetry sufferer, and this week is a special edition, our second special edition of Series 1, because I have an actual poet, my good friend and theatre maker supreme, Nazli Tabatabai-Khatambakhsh. And continuing the special edition theme, this week's episode is going to start with a poem written by me, performed by me. This is Longwater Lake. Yesterday I went to work and forgot my phone and forgot my keys and only had my coin purse, and at first it felt like, I should do this all the time, I'm liberated, and then I quickly hated it as I realised I couldn't activate Apple Pay to get my lunch, and Mr. Mulvaney might not be in with the spares when I get home, and the dog shouldn't be left alone for more than 7 hours, but at least I've got my bus pass that's always in the inside left-hand pocket of my rain jacket, and thank God the weather this morning was wet. So I set off on the number 9, which thankfully today did get me in on time. My colleague brought my lunch and I managed to let my flatmate know through a friend of a friend's phone that I was in a situation and it was fine. She'd be back by 5, and if I got back early and Mr. Mulvaney wasn't in, I can go see her mother, who lives around the corner, who's always got an aspirin, because Sod's Law says today a migraine will kick in. My workday gets done. It was unusually quite fun, and I'm early. Traffic isn't terrible. It stopped raining. I get off one step further because I'm having a great chat with the guy that sat next to me on the number 9, and it's fine because I'm not where I'm meant to be. And a sign tells me you can go fishing. Longwater Lake isn't just to be enjoyed by businesses built there. There's life in the water. And I thought that'd be nice to see. So I walk through slightly swampy soil, then it hardens and opens out, and there's birds in the trees on the bank. Long reeds around the edges, dragonflies bouncing off the water, ducks having a quack. And I lay down on my back and I must have fallen asleep. And when I wake, the light is starting to go. There's this gorgeous orange glow around it all, and I reach into my pocket to take a picture of the view, capturing it to show you, and I remember it's not there. I feel the gap, and then the dog, and then the Apple Pay, and what you'll say, because I am forgetful and I should have been home a long time ago, and I can't have a picture to remember all this detail. This moment of beauty for me will not prevail as a future reminiscence of a time I actually felt okay. So I leave.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm bringing my hands together. I'm clicking my fingers.
So briefly, Nazli, please introduce yourself. If you could grace us with your pronouns, that'd be lovely. And I guess a brief thing on how we know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Nazli Tabatabai-Khatambakhsh, and I'm really aware that I said that with more of a Scottish and English accent than I need to be aware of. And I pause here for a moment because I have a very dear friend who pronounces my name Nazli, which is, as it ought to be in quotation marks. My pronouns are she, oo, they. I use the oo and the they to demonstrate an intersection of, in Farsi and Azeri, we don't use gender pronouns, so I would be they.
Right.
Nonetheless, so it's at that intersection that I use that. And in this space with you, and I would describe as a performance poet, is how I would describe. And the path to that has been theatre and opera and a little twist of circus through that as well. Yeah, I'll pause there. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's great. And so we...
Oh, how we met.
Yeah,
Wait. How we met. We met, and this is unintentionally poetic, fragments and layers. Moving fragments and layers, I would say we met like a bricolage of beautiful and discomfort, and in spaces of struggle and spaces of sanctuary and of solidarity. I think there's a real temporal quality. I think for the autistic person in me that wants to go, but please can you just answer the question directly, whilst the ADHD in me's opened up all the pages, is going, but pick one. We met to collaborate.
Yeah.
Essentially, we met to collaborate. That has been a meditation that's remained in our conversations.
I've tried to explain this often to people who don't necessarily work within artistic realms, and I do stand by that it's one of the few kind of magical things about the world that I have had the privilege of sitting in, where there are meeting points where you'll bump into someone and you're like, fuck, you're really interesting and you're really cool, and I don't know what this might be, but actually you're gone because you were just at the same conference as me or something like that. And now being in the industry for 20 years, I've had so many points where those glorious people have then come back into my sphere, and I've been able to work with them. And I very much fit you in that category, because we encountered each other through an application I made to a company you were running. And then you took the time, which a lot of people don't, when someone has written an application, to get to know me a bit, and we just had a lovely conversation. And you were someone that didn't have any context for me, but saw me at that moment in time, and then that was kind of it. And then it was a really beautiful thing when, through Sanctuary Queer Arts, understand what that connection might be. For those of you, dear listener, who've not encountered Sanctuary before, they're a glorious company that I founded with Annabelle Cooper and Fraser McLeod back in 2018, and then it formally came to being in 2020, and we literally got our big pot of funding from Creative Scotland to make stuff happen for queer people in arts context across the country, just as the lockdowns were happening. So we had this giant plan for what we were going to do, and then everything had to be completely reshaped within the context of social distancing and the pandemic. And Sanctuary is still going strong to this day, and I'm so proud of the work that they're doing. But to go back to the podcast, how was Longwater Lake to listen to? How was that for you?
Oh, so clearly, or not clearly, to scroll back for a moment, our reconnection through Sanctuary continues to be a beautiful flame. I continue to collaborate with them as their associate director. So it sends me, when I think of you, I think of them, I think of us, it sends me right back to Scotland and right back into a space and time, a place, an environment, and the bus number 9.
Yeah. And
conversations that invite us to travel further, and finding ourselves in a light like no other. And that moment of when we pat ourselves down, that choreography of hand to heart, to pocket, to hip, to back to heart, to face. We all know this, it's not just because of Vogue Madonna. It's literally that pat down, and the quality of people that, what it was, Drew, for me was that we remain here for ourselves and for the pledge that we've made to others. And that tension is really, that's the stuff, that's the unquantifiable almost, that fluidity of we choose not to blip out. And that is never easy. But these gorgeous trinkets in your poem and in your voice.
The thing I didn't realise was in that poem that it's really something that's quite Scotland, if not maybe north of England as well, specific, is that thing of talking to someone on the bus. I think originally the setting of that was in Newcastle, within the context of the show that it was in. Is that something you overtly notice spending a lot of your time down south? Because like up here, you're talking to someone on the bus and that's fine, but down there?
Not as frequent an experience with strangers. In some ways, it's a rite of do you know what? You talk about Newcastle, and it's almost a rite of passage in order to be able to bounce from one bus conversation to the next, because it's never just one person that you're talking with. And that's a real quality, but learning that in Edinburgh and finessing it in Glasgow, well... and I think it's a skill that has carried into airports for me.
Yeah.
And those places and those moments of philosophers. These people they come as philosophers and as documentary artists, as activists, and it's extraordinary to consider that that this is part of a culture, a living culture, and that the need to connect, it's the kind of, in the absence of squeezing your hand, I'm going to talk to you as if I talk to you every day. Yeah. It's just exquisite. The solidarity that can come, or the genuine question of, this is a thing that's been bothering me. Does it happen to you? And it's exquisite. It's these exquisite episodes.
And there's a very unique brand of it in Glasgow that I think is our most sort of extreme brand of it in the whole of the UK, where it's also Glasgow, big city, potentially lots of problems, potentially lots of addiction things. So we're having people on public transport that's they've got lots of things going on. It's
something of there's something about cities, environments that can hold altered states, created, crafted, incidental, spontaneous, temporal, and the rarity of that. And that brings me right back to your poem, your choice of how you craft the environment and that sense of into the colour of that light. I'm with you.
It's beautiful.
Mm.
It's quite interesting. Within poetry context, I often describe myself as a recovering performance poet. It was something I clung on to straight away after I graduated from drama school, because I felt like I wanted to say something, and I'd always written, and so that was an immediate thing. I knew how to perform, and I had these poems, and a good friend, mutual friend of ours, Punny Morell, glorious producer extraordinaire. I was living with Punny at the time, and pretty much Punny can be blamed for a lot of things, actually. No, Punny can definitely be blamed for confidence in poetry, because at 21, I read her something that I'd had on a back burner and was just like, can I read you something, please, and tell me if it's shit. She was like, no, it's not. And again, you know Punny, so you know she means it when she says something like that.
I know her professionally, not personally.
Ah, okay.
So there's this kind of reassurance of the times where I've seen her reactions to things, and that now there's a tone of, actually, that was right. That was so right. It's lovely, really lovely. 21 though, hello.
21. And it was a really fun time when I was doing it, but then the kind of boys' club of it all I really found difficult and didn't really feel like I could penetrate through. And also making a living in that context is really hard. This podcast has been a bit of a renaissance for me in having my poetic voice be put out there as much as I've been doing. Of course, through other people delivering it, but this is my second episode within the season of only 5 where I'm also performing stuff Where does poetry and the performing of it sit within your priority list as an artist at the moment? Because one of the things, again, that we have big intersections on is that we have expertise in lots of areas of art and have passions in lots of areas of art, but come back to poetry quite a bit. Where does poetry sit within, I was going to call her she, poetry's she. Where does she sit within your practice at the moment?
She's a really good pal. To continue to personify her. She's a constant, she's quite spacious. She surfaces generally in the same way that monologue writing for me and performing surfaces when I really need to be thinking and feeling and being and considering what it is I'm doing and how I'm doing it. It conjures, it demands, although she is spacious. So when she asks to be present, I listen because she asks of me so little. It also is a form of how I think critically. It's interesting, there's a poem I've performed in Brussels and in New York. That quality of, because it's such a complete form, for me, performance poetry is on one extreme of the scale, of the spectrum, and then right at the other end is my opera writing, which is entirely reliant on a consensual partner, collaborator, composer. So it's like experiencing a most Moorish, delicious meal, the performance poetry, but is something that I couldn't order every day. It's a lot. It's a lot. And that may change. I may reach a realm of my practice where it's entirely dominated by performance poetry, but right now it's like a pressure valve or a early warning system.
It sounds like it's quite a similar thing to me, where she's part of your mental health practice. Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I guess there's more bridges and tunnels.
Okay.
Between my performance poetry portfolio and me as a civilian, if you like, or me as an, because I quite often. There's the artist public me, and there's the private human me. And somewhere in amongst all of that, I'm a person that interconnects, because there's the political and there's the activist and so on and so on. And sure, these are not separate containers, these aren't extremes. However, the performance poetry, certainly in the last 5 years, has been a much more of an interconnectedness. It holds that really liminal space between my human self and the artist self, the private and the public. And never do I perform anything that is needing to be private.
Right, okay.
And that's been part of craft, though. That's been part of developing my craft in the way that I wish to. I think where it's perhaps more volatile is when I start to improvise off the page. And when I'm doing that with a musician, there's this incredible instrumentalist and composer. She's actually a filmmaker as well, Kimia Alayari, who plays the Azari tar to my voice, and I'm an Azari speaker. So something happens there in that improvising. So I guess there's the spaces that relate to different parts of my identity and the different times of my identity and different times and zones of my mental health.
I think there's something really powerful about the connection between mental health and poetry, and that I think for everybody within that realm there is going to be a connection, because you're writing it because you're trying to make sense of the world. You're writing it because you want to observe the world in a different way. You're wanting to document. You're wanting to revel in the beauty. There's always so many reasons, but of course there is a cognitive process that's gone. We've said, I want to write about that, so I'm going to. What is the quality of something that means that you go, that's private and that's got to be kept for myself? Could you just expand on that a bit?
It's super valuable, your question, because it presents containers, censorship, self-censorship, the persecution of individuals with mental health conditions across time. When is it safe to say? When has it been safe? How has it been safe? There's something about the material, if it's not been processed, is it necessarily still going to be the art that I intended it to be. I think there's also something about the readiness of how much you want people to ask, is this biographical or is this fiction? There's quite a lot of assumption that everything that is written is a verbatim or a testimonial. And equally, there's that space where people want to make it fiction because it's too much in that moment. Because quite often there's an embroidery of working from trauma, whether that's come from childhood or adulthood, or that particularly volatile space of the tweens, and whether that's, puberty to adulthood, or into menopause, or into the different becomings, actual or cultural. I think, Drew, though, it comes more to censorship. However, asterisk here, I'm also conscious that the way that my mind is wired, that I won't necessarily, like other colleagues or friends or peers or artists, know. Generally, most people don't talk about that. Which is like, and you kind of go, oh, interesting. So you don't, you would hold back here. Would you? You just know how to hold. How do you know that?
Yeah.
How do you, and what do you mean? That's obvious. Oh, right. So, okay.
But I think there's something really interesting in the public discourse at the moment about how people with lived experience of trauma are expressing that through their artwork. I'm making a show at the moment for young people. It's called Sam the Sword, and it's about a transgender tropical fish. And it is one of my most favourite things that I've ever been put together. It was born through working with a brilliant, glorious, full trans non-binary team, adapting a kids book that I'd written during the pandemic. And my premise for the kids book was I want to create a trans narrative where the environment that the character is living in, their transness, that aspect of their identity was not a problem for anybody in there. And what can we do within that realm to still make a dramatic story? So a tropical fish tank happens to be one of those environments. So literally it's happening in your living room right now. Fish are some of the most trans of all animals, changing genders. And so I was like, cool, let's set it there. What was fascinating about the evolution of the project, and it now is about to premiere in Jersey, at Jersey Arts Centre this summer in a few weeks' time. One of the headline things for the Children's Theatre Festival there. The biggest thing that came out from the development of it was that we had to make this fiction. We had to make it a shared narrative that wasn't driving upon one person's particular real, definite details from one particular person. The story became an amalgamation of lots of people's stories, and very much needed to have its own identity and its own thing, because it was going to be harmful. It was going to be harmful to the people making it. And I'm now just going off on one because that's the thing that gets me so angry about what's happening about trans identities in the public. Is that there's somehow this perception that anybody who sits within the trans umbrella has suddenly just made that decision. Just like, woo, woken up, woo, boy now, ooh, girl now. I'm like, anybody I know, and I speak from myself as a non-binary human within this realm, it is such a huge deal to understand when you step out your door that there are so many aspects of the world that you encounter that are going to be counter to you, that are going to be opposite to you, that are going to be negative towards you. And the bravery it takes to step out your door in your authentic form is always something I'm so much in awe of.
Yeah.
And the idea that would be a casual decision for anybody just makes my blood boil and speaks horribly to how little trans people have been consulted on these big decisions that are being made by our governments.
Absolutely. There's such a intricacy here, a necessary one, and And there's an upcoming arts research conference I'm part of in London, and the invitation on that has been really beautiful. The curator is Tomei Bacon, and they are an artist and a phenomenologist, an extraordinary thinker, and the opportunity at that conference is for me to revisit a piece I directed for the National Theatre of Scotland, Nellie Kelly's piece, and it's set in the future, and I'm writing a new Carmen also set in the future. And at the conference I'll share some of that, some materials, and we will enter a silent space. And within that silent space, at the other end of that, is to consider, well, dare to imagine the future as we would hope it to be, the multiples of it, and now live in that moment with me. Imagine it's happened. Now what? There's a necessity for me to be able to dare dream those multiple futures as if they have happened, because I want to know, once we have travelled through, and we will travel and we'll keep travelling and we'll keep working, however, there are going to be those moments where mutuality of freedom is there, and I want us to have got there, rested, revelled, celebrated, and gone, okay, here's the next bit of the work. In amongst all these struggles, I guess it's this thing to feel the moment and know that it is going to change. It may not transform into exactly what it needs to be quite yet, but it's certainly not static. We are not static.
And that's so vital in our current climate, is like, how do you find the strength to be optimistic? How do you survive every day with the barrage of stuff that's being thrown at us? And I think that's so powerful, that thing of kind of going, there is power in hoping and the doing of hope. So the doing of, okay, things come to pass, this is what it'll be. I want to experience for a moment what it feels like, as if we are in the future that I hope to be in. How does that change me in this moment? And how does it renew a commitment to that future? What are the things that I do on a daily basis that may be micro but move me towards that? I think, if it's okay, we will hear some of the poetry of Nazli.
Sure. So this comes from a collection of poems that I wrote in response to the poet, in response to the poet Furu Farrokhzad. She's often been described as Iran's rebel poet. She was born in 1934. Her life ended in 1967 in Tehran. She was 32 years old. The collection's called 9 Months, the Divan of Tabatabai-Khatambakhsh. The 9 months alludes to her being 9 months in the UK as a filmmaker and a poet. There's a tradition of response poetry writing as how poets learn their craft. Not unique to Iran, but certainly one that features. Yeah, we're going to do this one. It's in response to her poem, I Will Greet the Sun Again. And here it is. I am able to live only minute to minute. My heart is the heart of a sparrow. The false shadow of the spider's web lifts its shoulder and drops. Between pages, I took myself underground. A circle of women collide around me, parting only to create a path for my parents. How is it that I am here with them again? Circling forwards and circling back, I am a fixed point struggling. I see beyond the glass of my window there is a wall. My eyes turn from the wall to see a sleeping garden. Snow is falling, 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 and I am falling, 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 and I'm dissolving, 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 shards of hope lodged in my throat. I have seen darker nights than this. My bones feel burned and my eyes unclosing. What skin will come from this scorching? Minutes move to irregular seconds, coming together into hours. I look to my hands, let my hands do the work, trace the pages to find between the letters a way revealing itself. Here false shadows subside. Here the light is warm. Here I see that I still have faith in lust as a force for renewal, a force for reinvention, a force to greet myself once again. This house is no longer black.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The House is Black is the title of Farouk Farrokhzad's one of her short films. So it carries that for those that want to go and seek that film out.
What I love about putting this podcast together is that each week I do a fact sheet that features the stuff that we talk about. So I will be sure, dear listener, to reference the work of this beautiful Iranian.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's an amazing poet. She was a theatre maker, a filmmaker, and I think one day would have been an extraordinary opera maker as well.
Yeah.
But writing in response to her is across time, across place, across upheavals, across freedoms.
Also a really fucking beautiful way to honour your heritage and your, like, where you find yourself in the world right now. Nazli, where can the great listeners of the world find you online if you want to be found?
I would love to be found by dear listeners. A good place to find me is on Instagram. You can find me. I'm Nomadic Nazli.
And of course that will be on our fact sheet. To download this for free, head over to Drew's website, www.drewmakestheatre.com. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for finishing off the season with us.
Hugely humbling. Hugely.
Thank you to all my guests this season: Kirsty Pickering, Stephen Will, Kevin Peagleday, Danielle Jam, and of course the glorious Nazli. I hope to be back for season 2, but without further ado, take care of yourselves, and I hope to be back in your ears soon.